all this issue, this federal issue that's going on, when it comes to privacy on the internet, can companies sell off your information and track you and do all of this without any of your consent or knowledge? Can we do something at the state level, and is that what you're proposing?
We can do something at the state level, and if you remember back in April, the president signed after Congress voted in favor to really allow these internet service providers, so Comcast, Verizon, AT&T, Spectrum, whoever you might have for your internet service provider, to sell your personal data, your web browsing history, what apps you're downloading, that kind of stuff, to third-party vendors, basically advertisers who are then going to now peddle information towards you, directed at you on the internet while you're searching the web. So I think this was a terrible law. 70% of Americans agree that this was a stupid thing on Congress's part to do. But we can do something about it here in New York State, and that's what we're trying to do. I'm sponsoring legislation that essentially says that if you're an internet service provider in New York State doing business in the state, then you are not allowed to sell your customers' personal information or web browsing history unless you get prior written consent from the consumer. So it's basically a consumer-driven law that, to me, makes common sense.
And what's nice about this is when you look at net neutrality is what we're talking about. There's a lot there. And when you're so if you cherry pick, which really you've done here, there's certain elements of net neutrality that are that had good protections, strong protections that were positive for us. So your bill, though, is focusing on one of those elements. It's not like all this other stuff being thrown in there and clouding it all up. You're really just focusing on the ability of these people to be able to, these companies to be able to sell our information.
That's correct. And the other unfortunate part about the federal law that was put in place is it really scaled back a lot of the privacy rules that were put in place under the previous administration and does not allow FCC to really develop new regulations to encourage privacy or force privacy among these providers. So, just imagine you're a pregnant woman. You're on the internet. You're searching for the latest baby care products or information about pregnancy, and the next thing you know, you're being advertised about certain child care products, or you're someone who's facing an addiction crisis, and you're searching, rehabilitation centers on the internet. Next thing you know, you're being peddled, whatever rehabilitation center is looking to lure you in. So, there's just people go on the internet with the expectation, I think, of privacy, and they don't want their information sold to advertisers. And to me, it's no different than the telemarketer calling your house with the annoying phone calls. And
isn't it Spectrum that came out and said we are not going to sell your information? I think they came out, and a couple of other companies have come out. But it does open that door when you think you're in a safe situation. It does open that door. This would prevent that. How would you, though, when it comes to enforcement? Because we have the do not call list, and I got to tell you, I've been on the list. I still get phone calls. How do we enforce it?
Well, it's we're going to have to develop regulations here in the state to enforce it, but you want to make sure that the law's in place first, that you have this process in place where they have to get your consent first, and if they violate it, there can be fines or whatever it is towards the internet service providers for violating that privacy. But right now, it's the wild, wild west on the internet because of what Congress did, and we want to tamp down on that a little bit to make it a little more private here in New York State, so they can't just be selling your information. I've seen it myself. You go on a website, and next thing you know, you may be looking for a pair of shoes or whatever, and then you have this ad for the same exact company that you may have been looking for shoes popping up on your page. Like, what a coincidence! How'd they know I was looking for that? So it's pretty scary what they can do these days, and there should be some expectation of privacy when you're searching.
Sanctuary cities, where are you? There was a rally held here in Utica this week on that issue. Pro sanctuary city, where are you on that?
Well, there was a bill in the Assembly that was brought up earlier in the year to make New York a sanctuary state, which I did not support. And essentially, the reason I did not support it is I think there has to be, first of all, the bill was very flawed in the way it was drafted. But I also believe that there has to be communication among law enforcement agencies, whether at the state level, the federal level, when there are people violating the law. I'll give you a perfect example. Under the bill that was in the Assembly, if someone in, let's say, Utica were making death threats against the president, the Utica Police Department could not communicate that information to the Secret Service. To me, that's an issue. If someone's threatening someone or violating a federal law, there has to be communication, and it's not about targeting immigrants. I understand, that's some people's concern, but I also believe that we have to have law and order, and you can't have people making these kinds of threats or whatever it may be and not being able to communicate it to whatever federal agency it might be that investigates those things.
What are your thoughts on this issue where a law, I think this might have come out of the Senate, trying to pass a bill into law that would require, I don't know a lot about this, so I'm sure you do, presidential candidate, I mean, obviously they're targeting President Trump here, to release state taxes. What are your thoughts on that, and what are the details on it?
Well, I think it's a bill that the state Senate Democrats are pushing, really because look, the president's taxes are in the news, and they are trying to force a conversation here about having him disclose his taxes. I personally think he should be disclosing his taxes. Every president's done it, or candidate has done it for as long as they've been for many years. But look, it's really I think an attempt for them to get some publicity, really. Whether he discloses his state taxes, the federal taxes are the ones that people really want to see. Right. Those are the ones that you take your deductions and everything else. So I think it's an effort to really get some publicity on the Senate Democrats' part. But overall, I still do think he should disclose his federal taxes. All
right. And finally, I wanted you to know if you wanted to pipe in. I know the mayor of Utica has come out against a casino downtown, the complex. The county executive saying it's not just the casino; it's a craft beer museum, sports complex, etc. Where do you stand on the topic, and specifically on the Oneida issue?
Well, I think the concern that I had in that whole situation is, I understand the mayor, as the chief elected official in the city, has to look out for what he thinks is in the best interest of the residents of Utica. But there seems to be a breakdown in communication happening, and the mayor communicated that concern about the casino to the news before communicating it to the county executive.
Yeah.
And you have to have good open lines of communication. We always seem to communicate very well among the elected officials in the county, and it was unfortunate that this came out in a story in the newspaper before there was actual conversation between the mayor and the county executive about the mayor's concern over the casino. So I would hope that they could have better line of communication. I certainly want to sit back and see what the plans would be for that. People have been saying for years that we'd love to have the Oneidas make an investment in the city of Utica, and now we're talking about an almost $80 million investment that they seem to want to make. We should sit down and listen to that. We're looking for this kind of sports and entertainment venue, thing down by the auditorium.
Sure, yeah. And
we have an entity here that wants to help assist with that. So I think it would be foolish not to sit down with them and at least hear what they have to say.
One thing is for sure that when a political figure locally goes out in the media and speaks in contrast with another fellow politician, or maybe critically, right. It's just a red flag. Something's going on there, because normally this stuff is really worked out behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I have no issue with the county executive, the mayor, expressing their concern over a particular issue to the media. I think they should do that.
Yeah.
But also, you want to have good partnerships with your fellow elected officials, and as a courtesy, you do want to talk to them first before going out publicly saying you're against something.
All right. Anthony Brindisi, Assemblyman, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
All right, Bill. Thank you.